Welcome to the Occult Rejects. We got a very, very special episode tonight. It's Friday live show, and I want it to be a good one. So I had to bring another. I brought a Gnostic onto the show. Everybody's favorite Gnostic. We got Miguel Connor, also known as Aeon Byte. But before we introduce him, we're going to introduce the other rejects. We got the Occult. So we got the Occult Reject mad scientist, Lisa. What is going on? How are you? Thank you very much for making this. You're muted.
You're muted.
And you did it again.
I was muted.
What about
too.
now?
Now you're good.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me. Very interested to hear what Aeon Byte has to say, and I'm very, very excited about this topic. So thank you for inviting me on, and hello to the fellow rejects.
So thank you very much for joining us, Lisa. Appreciate it. And we got my man Jules. What is going on, sir? Thank you very much.
What's up, guys? It's good to be back after a couple weeks. I'm Jules, host of the Greypilledpodcast. You find me on X at greypilledpod, Rumble, YouTube, all those places. Go subscribe to me there. Patreon.com/greypilledpodcast. We're actually going live after this show, watching Twin Peaks. It's funny, we're doing Occult David Bowie tonight, seeing he was in Fire Walk with me. Very interesting, because I think he wanted to be in that movie. Anyway, yeah, it's good to be here on a Friday night. I hope everybody had a good week. Y'all go ahead and like the stream, share it, and let's fucking go.
Oh yeah, thank you very much, Jules. I appreciate it. And my man Ethan Indigo, he made it. What is going on, sir? Please let everybody know what's up with you and your books.
Honored to be here. If anyone missed Miguel's presentation on Elvis, you got to check it out. It was amazing. I know this is going to be dope. Yeah, I'm an author. I'm on all the social media, easy to find. And my book's most popular one, Geometry of Energy, easy to find as well. So yeah, I'm stoked to be here with everyone.
Well, yeah, thank you, Ethan. I appreciate it. I'm glad you made it, my man. And my boy Tyrone, what is going on, sir?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I appreciate it for being here, Nick. Thank you so much. You know, it's always a pleasure being here, an honor to be here, I should say. Everything you can find on me is on rebirthoftheword.com. Yes, definitely go and get Ethan's book. We got to finish out the discussion with him. His books are great. I love his books. I'm definitely promoting that every time. You can also find my book, Journey Through the Origins of History, on Amazon. I appreciate it to be here, and thank you.
Of course, sir. And my man Tim Constantine, what is going on, sir, from Sixth Century Podcast? Please let everybody know what is up.
Hey, Nick, what's up? I love everyone here tonight. Happy to do this. I love this concept for this show. I talked to somebody about a month ago about doing this, and it fell through, so I'm excited to do it on here. This is great. Occult David Bowie, let's go. Yeah, Sixth Century Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Patreon. And thanks again, Nick.
No, of course. I'm glad it worked out like that. It's pretty funny how it's like it canceled, and then one day you just got an email of me inviting you to a show you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it was weird like that.
He is magic.
Yeah.
Fucking around. But now, before we introduce the guest, somebody already said it in the chat. They beat me to it. If you have not heard the Occult Elvis that Miguel did on the Occult Rejects, fucking check it out. It was probably one of my most fun and mind-blowing shows. Like, he literally had everybody like, go, what the fuck? I didn't know Elvis was into that. It was doing that. Go check that out and check out the book. But tonight, we got him on for another person that is somebody that I'm sure all of us here have brought up at some point with the occultism and with music, especially with me. I quote him a lot, which I'll probably throw in quotes and some random stuff about him as Miguel's going. But we are going to be talking about David Bowie, the occult David Bowie. So please, Miguel, let everybody know what is up with you if they don't know who you are by now and where they can find all your amazing work.
Thank you very much. Had to do that, but yeah, we got some strange fascination here. Yeah, Miguel Connor, host of Aeon Byte, Gen X Wasteland, and host of Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio. So that's really it. And should make the announcement that the book that I just wrote on David Bowie has been accepted by the publisher, and official announcement here on the Occult Rejects. And yeah, of
Yes.
course, don't get too excited. It will be out. It will probably. I've talked to them. It will be out in about a year because we've really only just begun. I've got the draft. There's going to be a lot of editing, copy editing, typesetting, yada. The whole process. But
Yeah.
it's there, and it's I think Occult David Bowie's old hat, because it is tentatively entitled The Gnostic David Bowie, because I think that's like Elvis. I mean, David Bowie's occultism is so well known, but there's so much more I think the world has missed. And that's, I think, what this book will do. And I've shown it to, again, many people who are Bowie fans and occultists, and they've been blown away by it. And I don't know. I hope this is it, because as I told you guys, the Elvis book was completely channeled or called. The voice came in my head. And when I was done with it, I was like, okay, that's my 15 minutes of fame as a biographer.
I remember you
I
saying
want,
that to me.
yeah. I want to move on. I just want to move on, go work for Mossad or, something respectable, move on with my life. And suddenly, as soon as I was
That's what's
done with
nice,
the
right?
book, yeah, I was done with the book. Another voice came and said, "You forgot about Elvis 2.0." I was like, "There's no Elvis 2.0," and I was like, "Oh my God, it's David Bowie. They're the same character." And I said, "Okay, let's go down this rabbit hole," and boom, just everything opened up. So I'm gonna say I don't think there's an Elvis 3.0. Please let there not be an Elvis 3.0, because these books drain you, and when these forces channel you, they take their pound of flesh, your mental health, your physical health, your life gets upturned. You turn down, work, family, all that. It's a brutal process, rewarding but brutal.
I want to bang my head against the wall writing like 40 pages of like slop. Like imagine like I had it being like 300 pages in a book. I'd be like, fuck this. So I give you credit, my man. It's impressive stuff to do that. Yeah, it's funny. I remember when you had said that you were done. Well, that was like, your 15 minutes of fame. And then I think I had seen you starting all of a sudden post, like, not obsessively, but like a lot on David Bowie. And I was like, oh. I think I even like saw you even starting to make some announcement or saying something like, I think it. And I was like, my man's going on with David Bowie. I can't wait to hear about this.
Yeah, I probably don't remember posting that stuff. Again, it's like what Plato
small
always
again,
talked about, the divine madness, where the best thing you can do as a human is be invaded or possessed by some god, the Muses or Dionysus or Apollo, and you're possessed and something good happens to it. But again, there's a toll.
Yeah. So I guess what was it that something popped into your head and it said David Bowie's the next one.
Yeah, and I saw the parallels with he and Elvis, and they're just monumental. And there's several theses that I have in the book. Again, one of them, which you hear a lot about, is Bowie was Bowie. He was a chameleon. He was innovative, and you hear that shit all the time, but nobody ever says, "Well, why?" And I understand biographers are historians. Their job is not the why, but a lot of people don't even go there. Why was David Bowie David Bowie? So there is a lot that happened from both the stars and his life that turned him into David Bowie. The other one too is how Gnostic he was. As you start breaking down his life unconsciously and consciously, he really was moved and inspired by Gnosticism. It's almost like it's the entire thrust of his message and his worldview and so forth. And we can break some of them down if you want. And the other thing too is also Saturn. I realize that both Bowie and Elvis really were ruled by this being called Saturn. And in a way, Bowie told me, David, I need to call him David. I promise I wouldn't call him, I always call him by his first name, that he's still trapped in another dimension, that he left. And of course, I make the argument with Black Star, where he gave us this message of the world, his ideas, and how Saturn is really controlling things. And he's still sort of stuck there. And we need to bring him back, because his entire life is this almost ritual, this mystery religion, Gnostic ritual after ritual. It's more than his personas. These are actually rituals that he did that lasted for years. And I think those four things really reveal a brand new vision of Bowie. And nobody's ever really written a occult Bowie. There's The Tao of Bowie, which is a good book, but Edwards focuses more on his Eastern interests. And then there's a book coming out, I think, in January by Peter Ormegard, which is Bowie's Quest for God, but it's more metaphysical. I bring in the occult, his UFO experiences, his conspiracy theories. I see the lenses through why David was working in these things and what happened in his life, and I just throw everything in, and this will be all in the book.
I forgot he was into conspiracies. There's interviews I saw like he did on TV, and he would say like conspiratorial shit. God, there was something he was going on about. I was like, oh wow, he was saying this is like shit people get famous on Instagram for saying now.
Yeah, that's for sure. And some of it, of course, was when most people know in the 70s when, the cocaine started rotting his brain, and he went off and started embracing Nazi occultism and saying things like, England needs a figure like Hitler, and Hitler was history's first rock star, and allegedly gave a Nazi salute before Elon Musk and all that. He gave a Nazi salute and got just lambasted by the press, and he was into some, and of course the whole alien thing. He always thought aliens were there and they were controlling the world, and he was completely out of control for a while, but it happens.
Hey, did he have a UFO magazine that he put out early on, like before the cocaine brain rot?
Yeah, in the late 60s, he was part of a magazine, and he would do in London in his flat or in some building, he would sit there all night with a telescope with others looking for UFOs. And he saw plenty of them over the skies. He had plenty of experiences later on while he was touring and all that. And then there's the famous story where he was doing an interview, and this is in the 80s. I think he was done with cocaine, but he like freezes and he looks out and he's like seeing something weird, and his nose just starts bleeding. And of course, if you read Whitley Strieber's Communion, when the visitors come, that's one of the signs is a nosebleed. So, and there's more with him and extraterrestrials. They were really part of his life.
Yeah. Seemed to be the same with Elvis too, right?
Yeah. Elvis had 3 encounters and was a huge UFO guy, reading up on the literature and all that. So yeah, both were obsessed with the whole extraterrestrial thing.
There's a story I came across, and you just jogged it in my memory. I heard it on a podcast a long time ago, but it was a story out of Detroit that Bowie was on tour and he was playing Detroit. And right. Detroit was having a UFO wave at the moment he pulled in there. So he did basically what you said. I guess he went out and got a telescope, or he already had the telescope, and they set it up in the limo, and they opened up the limo sunroof, and they were looking for UFOs in the limo on the way out of Detroit. Great story.
Yeah. And he would do that, like traveling Minnesota and other things. Like Elvis, he had this thing about flying, so he would drive or take boats or trains and all that. But yeah, he did that, and even during the show, he was asking people, if you have any information on the UFO, let me know. Now, of course, a few days later, the government debunked it, but I'm sure there was more. I'm sure David was right, and something had happened.
One thing I did want to mention before, we kind of got a little bit off of it, but you had mentioned cocaine, and I think even earlier you kind of mentioned I guess like David Bowie reinventing himself. People it's just him being silly or whatever. I feel like a lot of artists, the drugs just get thrown as an excuse for them actually rather being intelligent or occultists. I think when they do weird stuff, they're like, oh, it must have been the heroin or the cocaine. They party, so that's why they said that or did that. I think just that's a lot of times. I think that unfortunately takes place for other things. I just want to throw that in there. I think even with David Bowie, I think even when he did Station to Station, I mean, that was a huge time when I think he said he was basically doing cocaine for years straight. Some crazy shit like that. The whole album. There's some deeply occulted shit in that one. I mean, he even mentions from Kether to Malkuth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're going to look at that as oh, that just must be cocaine psychosis, you're never going to understand what the fuck he was saying.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, he was never a drug guy in the 60s, a spliff here, some acid there. And then in like the early 70s, he and Angie were actually anti-drugs. They would speak out publicly of the problems with drinking and drugging, and they didn't do drugs. The problem is he got caught in that I need to work harder, so I'll do cocaine so I can make more money. So, because he was not just a star, but he was also a producer, a media guy. He was producing
An
like
actor.
Iggy Pop. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was producing Iggy Pop's albums. He did Lou Reed's famous Transformer album. I mean, he was working around the clock. So he started doing cocaine so he could stay up all night in the studio and tour, and eventually it got the best of him, and he wasn't doing like the shit cocaine that all of us did when we were young. He was doing the Keith Richards. It was this just perfect grade cocaine where he just did a bump, and for 8 hours he'd be
Colombian.
flying up, whatever it was. And eventually, he had a diet of peppers, milk, and cocaine. That was it. He was like a skeleton. And he would appear in the Dick Cavett show just talking about all these weird occult things and freaking people out and sniffing and all that. He was a complete disaster, but somehow he kept putting out just amazing albums, like you said, Station to Station, Young Americans, Diamond Dogs. He was just part of him was still able to create great art and very occult art, but he also became obsessed with occultism, like stories of him staying in his LA house. Yeah, that was the great story. I don't, coke addicts think is like he got so paranoid and he got into a magical battle with Jimmy Page and others, and he kept thinking Lou Reed is the devil and witches were trying to get his semen or to create some moonchild, and he got so paranoid in New York. So very smartly he moves from New York to the LA cocaine cult capital of the United States, LA. And then it gets worse, and he's when he's not doing music and stuff, he's just sitting in his house, just like watching Nazi documentaries and scrying Kabbalistic and occult sigils all over his house and driving around and casting spells. I mean, and then there's a famous story where he thought that there was a demon, that Satan was at the bottom of his pool, and he calls his wife Angie, and Angie comes over, and Angie was basically an atheist, and Angie was like, yes, there was this ink at the bottom, this evil thing moving around like some Lovecraftian thing.
That's
And
terrifying.
yeah, and Angie's like, well, should we call like a priest? And I don't want any press about this. So Angie has to look up all these exorcism prayers, and he and Angie do this exorcism prayer, and this evil disappears from the bottom of the pool. So it's there's so much more, but yeah, his 70s were pretty wild.
Yeah, there's that story you mentioned, like he was, I guess, worried about witches getting his semen, and there's a story I read about that. I think it's in Angie's biography.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the name of the book. I've got a whole bunch of rock books over there, and it's in one of those rock books. But she does like a whole tell on that whole entire situation. And he was on he was on a binge in LA, and he called her because he thought he was being held captive by these warlocks.
Right.
And they finally get him to go out, and they get him to go out into the street and get a cab and go to his new manager's house. And then they have to like lock him in a room, or I think he even locked himself in a room because he was so paranoid. And Angie calls up the rock writer for Circus Magazine, Wally, and she was like a goth kind of a witch.
Yeah, Wiccan, very big in New York. Yeah,
right. So she gives them like some sort of a ritual to do to sort of break him out of this bender. It's wild. But that was Angie's own words. She said that like nobody knows if these warlocks are really he said that they wanted to have a child with him, and like a spawn of Satan type of a situation. So
right. Yeah. That definitely, and that's in my book and other instances. Again, plenty of witnesses, whether it was Mick Jagger or John Lennon, just saw Bowie just going completely insane, completely into this dark magic, into Nazi occultism. He became obsessed with Morning of the Magicians by Lewis Powells and The Spear of Destiny by Trevor Ravenscourt, and all this sort of very dark literature at the time. And it consumed him. And that's why he created his persona, the Thin White Duke, because this guy was just an evil fascist. And that was the persona that gave us Station to Station and all that. It was a scary time. Yeah.
Miguel, was there any validity to him keeping urine in the refrigerator?
Yeah. I think we have eyewitnesses to that plenty, and toenails and nails too. Yeah, he was afraid some witches would grab it and create a clone out of him or use it for spells or something. So it was yeah.
I mean, that sounds crazy then, but now, I mean, it's pretty believable.
Yeah.
Italians believe that, where in the mafia, if you watch a lot of mafia movies, the women, when they do the clipping of the fingernails and toenails, they usually collect it and throw it away. I don't know if anybody actually
or they burn them.
to that. But yeah, Sopranos actually shows that in one of the episodes. Yeah, they burn them and get rid of them. Yep.
Yeah.
Hispanics have the same thing about hair.
Yep. Spain. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So what I wanted to ask, I don't know if you want to get into it too much, but I think for David Bowie, when he first kind of started getting into that stuff, I could be wrong, but was he more of into Tibetan Buddhism at first? That's what kind of got him into world.
Let's see. What started David Bowie was being born where he was born. He was born in Brixton right after World War II. And that place was a dystopia. It was unlike the United States, England came out of World War II as a fallen empire that was cooked. It was done. And it was like living in it was a dystopia. It was just ashes, ruins. It was a food rationing. No electricity was barely on. Kids had to play in bomb shelters. And that's the world that David Bowie grew up, and it really affected him. The other thing too was his mother, like Elvis's mother, had kind of a second sight, but she was also abusive, like Elvis's mother. So it really crushed him. But she also taught him that he had special powers, telepathy powers, and he did. He had psychic powers, as I show in the book. Whether he was doing tarot or other things, he really could see through the veil of reality. And he came from a family. Elvis came from a family, probably with some sort of magicians. He also same with David, but also schizophrenia. He had 3 aunts that were schizophrenic. One of them had a lobotomy. His brother, who he loved, who really opened the world, his half brother, who was older, Terry, opened him to the world of alternative music and art and all that, also had schizophrenia. So like Elvis lost his twin brother, David lost his big brother, who was his idol, to schizophrenia. So that insanity was always chasing him. And as I write, he might have been, all his personas was him either already schizophrenic, trying to deal with it, or running away from schizophrenia. It's like, if I change my ego, this disease that's getting my own family won't get to me. But I mean, things like sci-fi really sparked him, but one of the main ones has to be when Terry opened him up to the beat writers. The one David really liked was William Burroughs. He loved William Burroughs. He loved his mythology, his worldview. And in fact, Burroughs is just infused in all of his early albums, like The Man Who Fell to Earth, Hunky Dory, Ziggy Stardust, and definitely Diamond Dogs, although Orwell is in Diamond Dogs too. But as many people know, Burroughs himself was open about being a Gnostic, and his worldview was very Gnostic. The idea that we're fallen by these terrible creatures, that we've fallen asleep, we got to wake up, and all these things that Burroughs had, which had Gnostic worldview. And David certainly adopted these for his albums. And Burroughs was very hardcore because his Gnosticism was kind of a DIY Gnosticism. In other words, in classical Gnosticism or Philip K. Dick, which Dick and Bowie and David have a history or a connection to, just as with David Lynch. But in Burroughs's in classical Gnosticism, Philip K. Dick, yes, we are trapped by the archons and we're in this terrible nightmare, this fallen dystopian world. But there is Sophia or Jesus or Hermes Trismegistus that comes to wake us up. With Burroughs, there is none of that. There are no saviors. It's us against the archons. So it's a lot more hardcore, and you see that in David's music and a lot of his lyrics and all that. But and Burroughs is a lot more violent. Burroughs believed, it's not about detaching and being mystic. It's about killing the servants of the archons, and we got to get into gangs, and the awakened people must go and just slaughter these gangs, these horrible people who are trapped, who are servants of the archons. He called them the shits. And they ask him, well, how do you know what's a shit? Well, because they're basically like Karens. People who are always in your business are trying to put mind parasites in your head. He believed also, Burroughs, in the idea of mind parasites, which is very Gnostic. So Burroughs really got him off spiritually. And like you said, then in the 60s, late 60s, he started getting really serious about Tibetan Buddhism, which I argue in the book is Tibetan Buddhism and Gnosticism are kindred, or they're brothers. The idea of the illusionary world and inner revelation and trying to break open from things. And he was very serious. Like Elvis, he almost quit the music industry to become a monk. So you got Burroughs, you got Tibetan Buddhism. Nietzsche too really starts influencing him, but he liked the Gnostic part of Nietzsche, the death of God of Nietzsche, because he started thinking, oh, God is dead, we killed him. And he started wondering, well, who's going to be God? And David would think, we will be the next God. So he had this idea of apotheosis, of becoming divine beings, which was really very Gnostic. But the other one too, the big one, is really Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, because Bowie took some acid and he went to see the movie, and it completely changed him. He became a very different person. And as Steven Snyder, Recluse, argues in his book Minotaur, Kubrick never had wanted 2001 to be a sci-fi movie. It was actually a ascension ritual, a Neoplatonic Gnostic ascension ritual. In fact, he told what's the name of the author? God, the author of the book. Who wrote the book? Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. But the author of the novel 2001: A Space Odyssey, he told him, this is not a sci-fi movie, this is a magic spell. And of course, Kubrick was very influenced by mystery religion and was into Campbell and all that. So Bowie was able to catch also that this was a magic spell, and that really influenced him to do Space Odyssey, which is a song about ascension and breaking open from the material world. So all those things really theologically and very Gnostic influenced Bowie to the late 60s and the 70s. And there's a lot more, but I'm getting carried away.
Yeah, the end of Space
Arthur
Odyssey.
C. Clarke. Sorry, Arthur C. Clarke. Yeah,
That's it. That's it. That the ending of that movie seems to depict some sort of a take on apotheosis.
It is.
Yeah.
And Steven Snyder makes such a good argument. He puts it all there, and I agree. And again, David, being very intuitive, also saw this between Burroughs and Kubrick and Tibetan Buddhism, and even by the 70s, he knew of Jung, and he even mentions Jung in, I think, Aladdin's Sane, Jung the Foreman, and before he has a song called Shadow Man. So all these currents really start influenced David. And then in the 70s, occultism kind of makes a comeback, right? Well, even before, Crowley becomes very big again. Crowley is in Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band cover. So is Jung, so is Burroughs. But this starts, the sort of hippy dippy new age goes away, and more boilerplate occultism comes in, and people like David and Jimmy Page and others start embracing this more hardcore occultism, which also influences his music and his worldview.
Well, some of the I guess David Bowie's music was different, but I guess even some of the bands around that time that I would say would be a little bit more openly with the occult, even the music was a little bit harder. That was kind of like when I feel like kind of getting into harder rock from the Beatles. I mean, even though the Beatles was whatever.
It
But I can
seemed
see
to
it
have
in
more
Christian
soul
music.
in it. You know, like more of these people, it had more of their, like, you know, I guess you could say pieces of their soul and their art. Kind of not like you don't see that today. You know, these artists today are dog shit. So
I
Yeah.
think some of the artists were working directly with William Burroughs on a few occasions. I mean, I know you two put him in a video, and it was seen as this like very edgy, esoteric type of a move for that band to do that. But I think that other bands are working with Burroughs, so I'm wondering if like Bowie actually made contact with him.
He did. He did. Burroughs interviewed him for Rolling Stone, I think 73. And of course, you know, David was just so happy. And they had a very long chat. And David talks about, you know, how Ziggy Stardust came, you know, again, very Gnostic. It's alien force that comes down on Earth and so forth and all that. But yeah, it was David was so happy to chat to his idol.
Speaking of Burroughs, one thing that just sparked right now, and we've talked before, Burroughs attended the School for Boys in Los Alamos down in New Mexico early on in life, and he was part of that Oppenheimer group of boys schooled or whatever they were doing. And what's interesting is that when we look at that area, 1947 is very symbolic. Everything from Roswell to the creation of CIA and, you know, what have you.
David was born that year.
I was just about to say that. And what's interesting is that 9 months prior in 1946, we have the Babylon working somewhere down the road. And then we have Bowie being born in January of 1947. So anyway, I thought that was kind of intriguing.
Did anybody else have any questions?
What about Kerouac? I know Burroughs, Allen Ginsberg, Kerouac, they seem to be in that circle together.
Yeah, he really loved On the Road. That was probably one of his favorite novels growing up, for sure. But for a canon, he really liked Burroughs, or he liked Burroughs. Again, worldview, sci-fi, Gnostic reality, this nightmare world where we're trapped and whatever. And Burroughs, I mean, as scholars have discovered, you know, the whole Mayan thing was really Burroughs. The whole ayahuasca thing was Burroughs. He was really ahead of the times. Before McKenna and all those, Burroughs was doing all of this stuff. And of course, he's a very complex and jaded individual, but he was certainly very innovative and ahead of the times.
didn't you say earlier that you think that Bowie is in some kind of other dimension or something?
Yeah, that's what he told me. I mean, that's what I'm getting. I mean,
That's the
you
download
guys
you
have,
got?
yeah, you guys have seen the memes, like, and I remember feeling the same thing when David died in 2016 with January 10th. I was like, part of me said, man, reality's gonna go to shit. And now you see the memes, like reality. You just look up on Google, reality has gone to shit since David Bowie died. And I think it's true. I think, like Elvis, he was holding up part of our reality, our imagination, our artistic soul. And without him, it's collapsed. And it's like, we need to bring him back.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you say that because, like I had brought up earlier, he was friends with Lynch, and you know, he went to him for a role in Fire Walk with Me, and he got the role of Agent Philip Jeffries, which was one of the smallest roles in the movie, but had some of the biggest significance because you see his character in The Return. You don't see Bowie, but it's kind of like his voice maybe. But he basically ends up being stuck in the Black Lodge and never escapes. Was that like some kind of revelation of the method of him saying like, hey guys, just so you know, I'm going here when I die? Or I don't know.
Yeah, good eye. And even in Black Star is a very Gnostic ritual that has the fall. And again, I'm drawing from scholars, which has the fall of Sophia and the demiurge and the fallen world. It's all there symbolical, and Lazarus and Black Star. And I think he is confessing, because a lot of times he has like a veil over his eyes, and the Gnostics used to call the demiurge the blind god Samael, and appears in the Kabbalah. There's all these hints, and it's almost like he's saying not only my life I didn't do the right thing totally, but I maybe sold out, but now I'm trapped with Saturn. There's all these hints from Lynch to Black Star, and again, that's before I even did the research. That's what he told me.
Fascinating.
Miguel, you've done a really good job of finding these personal stories and getting some kind of verification from other people. I noticed in your last book and this one, as you spoke. And I wonder, what were some of the more poignant personal stories that you might have found, whether in his youth, maybe that influenced him, or in his adulthood and in his fame?
God, there's so many. I mean, because David lived 27 years more than Elvis, so there's so many anecdotes, and some of them are really funny, and and he was such a rascal. I mean, his favorite concept was like, it's not stealing if I can make it better, because he was always ripping people off. He had no shame. I mean, there was a story like, never show David your new boots because he will steal them, wear them, tell him he bought them, and that it's a new style. He's like, he could care less. He was terrible at stealing, and he stole guitar players from other bands and all that. Is like Elvis, he was kind of a trickster figure. But God, anecdotes. The one that makes me laugh is you guys have seen that video, Ashes to Ashes, right? Where he's on the beach with the clown and all that, and it shows Major Tom and all that. But he's doing this video in the early 80s on the beach in England, and he's got his clown outfit and that, and some old guy walks by with a dog and gets in the shot. And the director's like, cut. And he says, take 5, everybody rest, because this old man is with his dog blocking the scene. And David sits down and, of course, lights a cigarette because he smoked like 5 packs a day. What was his famous line? I can ask for a cigarette in every language of the world. And so the director goes to the old man. He goes, do you know who this is? And the old man looks at David Bowie, looks up and down. Yes, I recognize him. That's a cunt in a clown suit. And David just starts laughing, and he felt so humble because he's like, you know what? Most of the world doesn't know who I am. I really am just a cunt in a clown suit. I'm really nobody when it comes down to it. And I think, what's the other line he said? God, I've changed so many times. I think my original identity was a overweight Korean woman. So so many anecdotes and funny things he would say.
One thing I did want to ask you about, from your diggings, I'm sure you looked into it. I don't know if it was for sure that he was a member or he practiced it, but was he influenced, and did he practice Golden Dawn stuff?
He did a lot of ceremonial magic, but he wasn't a member. It was everything he did pretty much on his own, and he kind of winged it. Again, scrying stuff, doing rituals. It's hard to say. I know when it started with Jimmy Page, Jimmy Page came to his apartment. No, he went to Jimmy Page's apartment, and he had his girlfriend at the time, Ava Cherry, and Jimmy Page knocked down some wine and blamed the girlfriend of knocking down the wine. And David got really pissed off. So he does this, and Jimmy Page looks back, and David's like, oh my God, he's casting some spell on me. So they sit there, lock gazes, doing spells on each other for a long time, kind of like something out of Zoolander, doing that, eyeballing each other. And then Jimmy Page leaves, and David's like, he's going to cast a spell on me. And he rushes to the library or the bookstore and walks out with dozens of books on magic spells. And he's reading and doing all these spells. He was convinced that Jimmy was going to try and destroy him. And again, that was during his cocaine days. So he was just, it's probably very little he didn't try at the time.
It's funny. Yeah.
And he was in Zoolander. Yeah, obviously he was in the movie Zoolander.
He was one of the modeling, one of the judges, right?
One of the judges, yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Another thing I wanted. Sorry, go ahead, Tim. Go ahead.
I was just thinking about the Zoolander part. I'll never forget what Miguel just laid out. Like those two Paige and Bowie looking at each other like they're about to have a wizard's mental
like
battle.
Hansel and Zoolander looking at each other. Yeah, what are those? It was like that. It was
That's
insane.
great.
Yeah,
That's
I think
great.
his darkest spell probably was giving us Dancing in the Streets with Mick Jagger. That was probably his darkest evil thing he did. So.
When it comes to like a lot of these, you like when they say he reinvented himself or he has these different characters. Do you think like sometimes those could be like expressions of him having like maybe a magical experience or some sort of attainment and understanding and him just taking on his experience and expressing it?
Yeah, you could say that. Again, I make the argument and I break down these mystery religion schools about purification and going down into Hades and ascension. And I put them with David's life and how they change with each of his personas. But like I said, I think a lot of it, and it's been noted before, is like he was so afraid beyond, magic and archons and extraterrestrials and superhuman Nazi races getting him. He was afraid he was going to go insane. And I think he felt if he switched his personality, he could be one step away from the schizophrenia that had devastated his family. Others have pointed out that when he started doing Tibetan Buddhism, which he was very serious in, he talks about, not just doing meditation, but he could levitate and see beyond the veil. He was very passionate about his Tibetan Buddhism and magic. But Buddhism taught him that, if the self's an illusion, then why not have some fun with it? Because it's not real. And it was after that, you could see him sort of changing. He decided, well, I'm not real, so I'm going to change my persona. There's no David Jones or David Bowie or Ziggy Stardust. These are just things. These are just images and
Characters we
construct. Yeah, we play that aren't real that might help us with our inner world.
It's just whatever mask we put on the stage.
That's the movie I was thinking about, Labyrinth. What significance is that? I mean, I know it's very, it has they talk about dark magic and all that. I mean, he's basically portraying who he is in a way, right? He's this dark magician. That lived in a cave.
Yeah, somebody put Afraid of Americans. That was what, 80s and 90s. He's very conscious about Gnosticism. And he's telling people in interviews, I'm just interested in Gnosticism and the God above God. And obviously his song Afraid of Americans is very Gnostic. God is an American and is just horrible being, all that. But on a side note, I think Labyrinth, that's where he again plays the demiurge. He plays this being that uses the labyrinths and shifts time and wants to feed off of other beings and so forth. Obviously, he didn't write the script, but he always had a way of appearing in movies that just fit him. Now, beyond Labyrinth and his package, which I don't know why he had to have that package, those tights. It's always so embarrassing because I show my kids the movie because I like it, except there's David Bowie's package. But he always had a way of falling into the right movie at the right time. Like you were saying, David Lynch, Fire Walk with Me, which if you look at season 3, Lynch's cosmology is also very Gnostic, right?
Right.
These forces of Killer Bob and and the firemen, and Laura Palmer is a manifestation of Sophia in this world. But
right.
You look at something like The Man Who Fell to Earth, which he did in the early mid 70s, and that is an insanely Gnostic tale. I mean,
and then in the first episode of The Return, maybe the second or third, I'm pretty sure Dale is literally falling to Earth through space. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. There's a few parts. Yeah, that I was going to mention. And in season 3, when they show, it looks like this, like, I don't know, some kind of control arm dropped this little ball, and it's this black and white vision of Earth, and it drops down, and then like somebody I forgot who shows up.
I think they're literally White Lodge.
Killer Bob,
yeah. Well, that was in the season 3. It was when the tall guy was with.
They're in the White Lodge. Yeah, that's called the White Lodge, and it shows it because it doesn't show the White Lodge for the first 2 seasons. But then in season 3, it shows it as this like celestial place where they're making these orbs and putting them in the tulpas and creating,
Yeah, that shows like the little image of Earth, and it comes down. It's like the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, very Gnostic cosmology. And even in Fire Walk with Me, David shoots out with electricity, and it says, who dreams the dreamer? And of course, you see a lot of his lyrics. He talks about the coming race, which he's talking about the vril. Again, the electricity, the moving through powers with electricity. But going back to the man who fell to earth, that's just a retelling of the Gnostic Hymn of the Pearl, if you've ever seen it. And that is a movie about somebody, this alien like we are, comes down and gets trapped into earth. You know, he gets seduced by television and other things. And then the man who fell to earth, which is a very Gnostic tale. And again, it's almost like instinctually he would fall into these very Gnostic movies. But somebody who had an awakening with The Man Who Fell to Earth is Philip K. Dick. Philip K. Dick went and watched it and was obsessed with it. He would go over and over to see the movie. Philip K. Dick thought that there was a hidden secret and something like that. And he was so inspired by The Man Who Fell to Earth that he wrote Valis, based on The Man Who Fell to Earth. And as many know, Valis is Philip K. Dick's great Gnostic opus. In fact, David Bowie appears in Valis. They change his name, but he's a rock star. So you have these strange connections with Kubrick and Bowie and David Lynch and so forth. Even Ridley Scott. I mean, David and Ridley Scott worked on a commercial in the 60s, but then suddenly they start kind of appearing in it. David appears in The Hunger, which was directed by Ridley Scott's brother, and so forth. And David Bowie was then very influenced by Blade Runner and used some of it in some of his talks and so forth. So there's this fascinating web of Gnostic occultism with Scott and Lynch and Kubrick and David and all these other figures, Philip K. Dick, that just keeps going through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I put it all down. It's all there so you can see it.
It's like they're all working together to make some big project or something.
A ritual, yeah.
Yeah.
A space
Complete
ritual. Yeah, cosmic ritual of hopefully our apotheosis, our ascension out of this world that we're trapped in.
So you mentioned Vril, and I don't know, I was just wondering, you said something about him getting sort of fascinated with the Germany in the 40s, right? Did Bowie have a stage where he got into Edward Bullard Lytton and that late 1800s Gnostic occult Germany movement?
I think so. I don't think he admits it, but again, you have to look at his lyrics when he says the coming race and the song "Oh You Pretty Things" about these aliens that come and said, the human race sucks, we're in charge now. And he seems pretty happy about it, but he calls them the coming race. So, yeah, I mean, he was an avid reader like Elvis. Most people don't know. I mean, he would read hundreds of books, and occult books, Victorian mysticism, all that was really something that he just absorbed and would put on his lyrics. And you have to see it, like in Station to Station, he mentions white stains, and you might miss it, but then you're, wait a second, Crowley wrote a poem called White Stains, or he says, I am wearing Crowley's uniform. It's all over the place when you start reading his lyrics and seeing his albums in toto.
I know we've brought up on the show I think some of the ways he's described making some of his lyrics is very kind of occult in a way, where he would write stuff and then cut it up. It's almost like a sigil, the way you do a sigil in a sense.
Bingo. Yeah, good point. That's a good point. Backing to William Burroughs, in William Burroughs' cosmology, there's these archons, right? These beings that control us. Two of the most dangerous archons are time and language. In fact, Aladdin Sane has a song called Time, and it's not like Pink Floyd kind of metaphoric and poetic. It's like there's this being called Time that wants to just feed on us, and he says, Time, the sniper in the brain. He's bringing up mind parasites or Wetiko, which he does in a lot of his albums. But time is like this being that just wants to destroy it. Again, Cronus, Saturn, whatever you want. But language too. Burroughs always thought that language is what keeps us from just being mere humans. It's a constraint. It's destroy it. So Burroughs felt you have to fool this archon called language. And Burroughs came up with this idea of the cut up, where you just cut things up, you throw them together, and something will come from your soul, from your unconscious, which will make sense. And it works. Sometimes it didn't. And you know who else used to do it? People say, Kubrick was a control freak. Kubrick loved the cut up technique. He did that for his movies and scripts. He would just throw things together. That's why people say, how come there's so many mistakes in, The Shining? Because he really wasn't that much of a perfectionist. He just felt, I'm going to do it over. I'm going to throw it all together and something magic will come up. But David found when he realized that Burroughs was doing it, he started doing it too. A lot of Diamond Dogs and a lot of his other albums in the 70s, maybe 60% of his album was just him throwing lyrics together and saying, this is what we're going to do. Later with the Berlin trilogy, Brian Eno was also into the same thing, and they would just throw music and lyrics together and just say, this is it. And when in the 90s, when he finally got his first like Mac or something, he would do that with his songs. He'd just put his music in the computer and just shuffle it up and say, here's my music. So for David also believed that the way to escape this world was to destroy language or find a new way to do language.
I think a lot of artists did that too, like use that Burroughs cutout method. I think more artists than we'll ever know tapped into that. And
that time period. Yeah.
Even in like the time period, and even in the 90s, I know some of the 90s grunge bands were doing that for sure.
Eddie Vedder.
Like Bush and Pearl Jam, absolutely.
Wow.
STP. And then you've got the later on, you've got that story about Rick Rubin and System of a Down, and they got hung up in like their biggest song writing it, and he had them go pick up a random book from the shelf and just open it up, and whatever line jumped out at them, they used the line and they created the bridge for the song, and it's like their biggest song.
Wow. Yeah. I think somebody in the chat, Brian Eno called it the oblique card set. I'm just gonna say this because I enjoy pissing off fellow Gen Xers, but just remember that Pearl Jam is simply discount Stone Temple Pilots. So I'll say that right now. But just to piss people, because I'm an STP guy. I think they're the band, but you are right. And of course, a lot of these grunge bands were influenced not just by Neil Young, but David Bowie was really, really big. And people forget that the genesis of grunge comes with that band Mother Love Bone, which the singer died, and then it broke up into these other bands like Pearl Jam and
Soundgarden.
Soundgarden. You're right. But Mother Love Bone was a glam rock band. Just like, you know what I mean? It started out as what David Bowie did, a glam rocker, and then it just shifted to this hard stuff. Just like glam rock, most people probably don't. Glam rock evolved into punk. That was their next step. So, and then punk rock evolved into new wave. And I always like with Elvis Costello said, well, how did new wave come about? He said, well, the punk rockers finally learned how to play their instruments. It's a great one. You see that Blondie, when Blondie started in the clubs, it was like, and then Deborah Harry and all these people, why don't we try playing some chords? And then, the music changed.
Yeah, Bowie was influence for all those, everybody, and I think it's because you couldn't put him in a box. It was he was constantly reinventing his sound. It's like anybody can go, any musician alive today can go find a inspiration in a Bowie album and maybe create something nobody's ever heard.
Right. And just remember, Bowie was either coked up or throwing stuff together or using instincts. I mean, he instinctually knew how to get the right sound. He wasn't, you might say, talented. He just had an amazing, almost psychic power to know exactly where to be and what sound to use.
I wonder if you found that he made any relationships between his Gnostic exploration and his UFO exploration.
That's a good question. Again, if he's under the William Burroughs, Stanley Kubrick rubric, then it's all there, right? aliens and archons and that high weirdness where
Yeah.
these guys, Elvis and others, could just throw, and McKenna just throw all this stuff together, including science fiction, and create this mythology that worked for them in the 70s. I think in the 80s and 90s, when he calmed down and he got off cocaine, and then in the late 80s, he actually started, he got off of alcohol completely, started going to AA meetings and all that. He really got into Elaine Pagels' Gnostic Gospels, and Harold Bloom, the great Yale professor who was an avowed Gnostic. And he was more into the inner light, make contact with something bigger than you and bring out the light. He didn't like put the archons away, because again, I'm afraid of Americans, and a lot of his other albums talking about dystopian landscape still was there, but it was more about kind of rise up and become divine and become kinder and direct experience with God and all. It was a softer David Bowie Gnosticism in the 80s and 90s and so forth.
Is there any
Here's the-
validity to this? David Bowie helped Trent Reznor quit drugs. Is there any,
He did. Yeah. I mean, he's a big AA, and unfortunately, he would go to AA meetings every week in New York. And people have told me that he would be in the meetings, but obviously, what happens in AA stays in AA. So I can't get any good confessions. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
He went
don't
to
know if
sober up
anyone's
with
brought
Iggy
it
Pop
up,
too,
yeah.
right?
Hmm?
Didn't he go to sober up? Him and Iggy Pop took off together to go sober up, right?
They tried. Yeah, they were when in there after Station to Station in the late 70s, Iggy Pop was really down in the dumps. He was in a mental hospital because Iggy Pop had finally crashed down, and David, they'd been friends for years and worked together. David was the only person that came to visit him, and while he was touring, went out of his way, went to the hospital. Of course, he slipped up some cocaine to help him out. And all that. But then when Iggy came out, they became like almost co-sponsors in a way that they got away from cocaine. They were still drinking a lot, but just drinking and touring. And when Iggy went on tour, David was part of his band. He would just play the keyboard in the back, just wanting to, stay out of the limelight. And they really helped up. And then they went to Berlin together. They almost died a few times because they were just kind of out of control. But yeah, David really started getting away from cocaine. He would do cocaine recreationally, but he mostly drank. He drank a lot, which is unfortunate. Unfortunately, Iggy Pop's drug usage, eventually David had to have an intervention in the 70s, and Iggy got committed and all this other stuff. And even they say, the song in Let's Dance, China Girl, David only did it because he had co-written it with Iggy Pop in the 70s for his album The Idiot. So he did it so that Iggy could have some money, because again, Iggy was down in the dumps again. So, but they were always they were really best friends, and they were really close, and they really supported each other whenever they could.
I didn't know that story with him.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Miguel, you mentioned several times the mind parasites. Was he a fan of Colin Wilson?
Well, that's a good question too, because that's a hard one to understand. He seems to, again, in his lyrics, mention Colin Wilson. Now, Colin Wilson was obviously very big in the 50s with The Outsider and The Occult.
Yes.
I mean, if you were a young guy, or you probably read Colin Wilson. And in his song Quicksand, he talks about the mind is quicksand, which is directly taking from Colin Wilson. Later in if you look at David's 100 favorite books, which you can find on the internet, Colin Wilson does make the list. But I think it's still Burroughs when it comes to mind parasites, because again, Burroughs had the idea of the mind parasite, the centipedes that burrow in your brain. Burroughs was obsessed with alien centipedes. It was just, it freaked him out, and he thought there were these horrible creatures that were ruling mankind. But there's a story that I put in the book, which Gary Lockman has in his book, founding member of Blondie, which has, when he was with Blondie, David invited him to to a party in his New York apartment in 1980 or 79, and Gary Lockman shows up, and of course, because it's a celebration, Bowie is tooting some white stuff, and suddenly David starts going, Colin Wilson runs a coven of witches in Cornwall, and this and that, and Gary, who also was very much into Colin Wilson, says, that's not true. He's just a researcher, a writer. He's not, he doesn't practice magic. And Gary's like, oh, he's thinking about this other guy that lives down the road who was doing that. So they get into an argument about it. And of course, David looks at his bodyguards and is, it just goes, and the bodyguards go up to Mr. Bowie is tired. You are leaving now. And they just dump Gary out of the out of the apartment. But he was like, but yeah, I think David probably knew and read Colin Wilson through periods of his life.
He seemed to be Colin Wilson seemed to be very influenced by Gurdjieff. I guess that's how you say his name. And, obviously Lovecraftian that he kind of capitalized on most of his books. So, yeah, it was interesting how that make an appearance in some of his lyrics. So I was just always curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Bowie had a fascination with 1984, right? And tried to buy the rights of 1984 off of Orwell's Widow. Great story, right? And I think he wanted to do a concept album on it, which had that been made, that would have been incredible, right? But the Sonia Orwell would not sell him the rights, so
yeah, she thought it was bizarre. It was bizarre. Yeah. Like the Simpsons doing Planet of the Apes musical. She probably was like, "This is ridiculous."
Oh, you a Simpsons fan?
Yeah, old Simpsons. Yeah. I haven't watched them in 20 years, but old Simpsons.
Yeah, I'm a Simpsons fan. When you mentioned that, I love the Simpsons. I watch that a lot. I just had to jump in and say that.
Yeah, it's a great scene. But yeah, so she rejected it, but of course, David was going to steal because he loves stealing from everybody if he could help it. He decided, well, since she won't let me do it, I'm going to do it in Diamond Dogs, songs like 1984 and Big Brother. And I'm going to combine this sort of Burroughs and Orwell sort of ideas. And I think part of it, there was a Ziggy Stardust musical that never got made. So the album, besides being cut-ups, is this throw of all these different ideas. But somehow the album's very cohesive. It really is a very scary and dark album about dystopia, mind control, and authoritarianism. So,
yeah, he worked it in.
And what's the other story to that I think is funny is he tried once to steal Frank Zappa's guitarist, and the word was on the street. So David walks into a restaurant, and there's Frank Zappa with his band, and Frank Zappa goes, "I know what you're trying to do, Colonel Tom." In other words, David was known as Major Tom, so he's bringing him down to Colonel Tom. And David and Frank Zappa get into a screaming match, and they're almost going to fight each other. And finally, David leaves. He eventually steals his guitar player, but David gets in a limousine with his staff and very English says, "Well, I thought that went really well, don't you?" So English, so dry.
Which guitar player did he grab from?
Oh God, it might have been Adrian Belew. I think it was Adrian Belew that he was stealing. Yeah.
I would assume this is all pre like Steve Vai playing with Zappa, right? Was that?
Yeah. This was late 70s around there.
Oh yeah, it was probably earlier. Yeah. I was gonna ask something and I totally forgot. Fuck. Anybody have any questions or anything else they wanted to ask?
I have a question.
Go for it.
What were one of the more remarkable UFO experiences that he had?
Well, I think we did cover them as far as I can tell. Again, he saw a lot of them. It was just part of his life, and I think those were really it. The ones we covered.
Gotcha. Do you think, like with his outer space stuff, do you think there's actually like occult symbolism behind that, or is it more just at face value? Like he's really just talking about like outer space and alien shit.
I think he saw it as outer space as star portals, like the Gnostics and the Neoplatonists, that outer space wasn't just planet to planet, but we could travel and break into these portals. And he was really smart because when he did Space Oddity as a novelty song to coincide with the moon landing, right? And it was a novelty song, and then it got more famous, but he kind of got himself in the, in the big leagues, if you would. But he recognized that the astronaut trope or archetype was the new shaman for the West. Because after, Space 2001, A Space Oddity, and the moon landing and all that, the astronaut almost became like the shaman for the America and the UK. I mean, in the 70s, more people would buy merchandise from that had astronauts than comic books or sports star. It was like again, the shaman had come, the modern day shaman of traveling. Astronaut was seen as the greatest job and the hero of our country. And David, as always being so smart, sort of adopted that trope, even though he was really talking about apotheosis and being a shaman and all that, and really used it in his music with the whole space age. But again, we're talking more of this sort of Gnostic, Neoplatonic travel, astral travel to the stars, like you see in Space Oddity. Some say Space Oddity is just a song about somebody becoming enlightened, becoming completely detached from the material world and just sort of floating out into space. And you see that theme and trope so often throughout David's career. Of course, yeah, and of course, when did that archetype do? When was what was the ship that got destroyed in the air? What was the name of it?
Challenger?
Was it the one that blew up in the air? That was
Yeah.
the end of the space age, you might say. I always thinking that was a ritual to close down our imagination.
Oh yeah, close down our thoughts of what's out there or exploring
Right,
it.
right. Because whether we went to the moon or all that, it doesn't matter. It's the idea, it's the mythology, the symbolism behind them. You know, that's what gets people excited, and it makes us a cohesive culture and all that. And I think when the Challenger was destroyed, it sort of ended our era of really looking at the stars and looking at the denizens of the stars and the portals and all that. So seems to have come back recently.
I did want to go on to a song. Did anybody have any questions before I ask mine? Okay. I just maybe your opinion or how much you want to talk about it. I don't know if it's a song that you talk about a lot. With Black Star.
Yeah,
First
that's
off,
a whole chapter. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. First off, one thing I did want to ask: did he know he was dying prior to that album?
Yeah, yeah. He had already been suffering from liver cancer, something that as Tim said, why he had to be replaced by a kettle, because he didn't have the energy to really go on Twin Peaks season 3, and he was turning a lot of things down. So yeah, he'd already know he had cancer. He was really doing bad. And he had a small hope he might survive, but yeah, he got everybody together. He told his producer Tony Visconti the truth, and Black Star is just a death ritual, his last, ritual of many rituals to say goodbye and make his confession to the world.
Yeah, that's I had heard some people say that, and they thought that that's like why some of these songs, in my opinion, are deeply occult, because they thought like he'd be a little bit more open about it, I guess, because it was like zero fucks given at this point. I already know I'm leaving. Even some of the lyrics in some of the songs on that album is like pretty like, oh, what the fuck did you just say to it? Like, some pretty funny shit. With Black Star, there's just and I might be taking this too far out there because I do look at occult symbolism sometimes differently, but like with the first especially the first, the second one might be a little bit of a stretch with my imagination, but in the first thing he says, in the villa of the Orman, or whatever, how you wouldn't pronounce that, stands a solitary candle in the center of it all, your eyes. Empedocles goes on a lot about Aphrodite being this flame, like literally in the back of your eye. And that always makes me think about that since I came across that. Does that like ring like anything to you, or does that sound too far out there? Was he influenced by Empedocles?
Not as far as I know, but I think the symbolism is right. Yeah, I break it down through various researchers and scholars. I mean, you see the dead astronaut with the jewels, and you wonder, is this Major Tom who has finally failed, who didn't make it? And then this girl with the tail takes the head of the astronaut to this village, and there's this ritual, and you have the three scarecrows, and of course, David then plays sort of this horrible preacher with the black star, which has many symbolisms that I break down, but Saturn is certainly one of them. I think that's the one. And he basically making this confession, and then you have this ritual with these women, and one woman is the center of it, and she escapes, and she is the Sophia figure that escapes, and she's played by the same actress who's in Lazarus, where David plays this demiurge figure, with if he's got both videos, he's got a cloth which symbolizes the blind god of the Gnostics. So you have him admitting that he's Saturn, and him confessing to it, and he's this oppressive preacher, and there's Sophia trying to heal things, but at the end I think he knew that somehow Saturn had gotten the best of him, because both videos are very, very dark. They do not have happy endings, and they're very confessional about what he's doing. I am not this, I have failed at this, and other things. So it's stark stuff what he does to exit his life. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, he was a nice father and this and that, and I love my life. It's pretty intense.
Marilyn Manson put out an album called Mechanical Animals. And I heard him say that he was influenced by cocaine and David Bowie to do that whole record. And there's actually some very Bowie-esque songs on there. It's a lot of spacey stuff on there. And he's one of the songs on there, he has that line that says "Dead astronaut in space." It's clearly a Bowie reference. So I think that whole Mechanical Animals album, which it's probably one of Marilyn Manson's best albums, is a nod, more than a nod to Bowie.
Yeah, I haven't heard it. So, but yeah,
you'll hear it if you ever listen to it. You'll hear the influence for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure he was in a band with Johnny Depp, right? Talking about Marilyn Manson.
I don't know, man.
Pretty sure he was in a band with Depp.
I'm not sure.
Oh, I've heard that. Yeah, I don't know if they were in a band, but they're friends or whatever. Yeah. I did read that Johnny Depp gave Marilyn Manson a house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I just looked it up. Yeah, Marilyn Manson and Johnny Depp were in a band together.
I figured because I knew they were in a band with Damien Eccles.
They were part of an alternative rock band called P, which included Gibby Haynes, Flea, and Steve Jones. Additionally, they performed together at the 4th annual Revolver Golden Gods Awards.
Wow. I knew it. I knew he was in a band with Depp.
Yeah, I'm going to give you your cookie later on, Jules. No, I'm just playing, bro.
There we go. Yeah, man. Hey, you can send it via PayPal.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, but that's interesting because I didn't know that, bro. I'm glad you said that because I didn't know that, and that's actually interesting.
Yeah, something to look into.
That means you know that he knows some secret shit too. That Marilyn Manson probably said. He probably just ain't saying it right now. He probably already knew that he was going to do some psychotic shit like that.
Anything else about Black Star you wanted to mention, Miguel?
No, it's kind of.
I mean, I don't want
much.
to.
Yeah, in the book, I have all the scenes broken down and the symbolism. So it's almost like if we talk about it, you have to look at each scene and each symbol. And, there's the black sun, which of course is Saturn in this world. And there's all these little symbols that in both Lazarus and Black Star that, you really need to see it as a visual. I put it all together and it'll make sense. It's again, a Gnostic ritual. It's Saturn winning the day, and it's hopefully the book people will know what we have to do to help David come back, and hopefully have the Starman fix our reality that it's just been falling apart since 2016, if you hadn't noticed.
Our souls have to go back through the rings of Saturn, and then maybe we can grab him on the way through.
Exactly. Because in Kubrick's movie, at the end, they appear in Jupiter. Bowman appears on Jupiter, but that's in the book. It's actually Saturn, and Kubrick was like, "Well, I can't afford special effects for Saturn, so we're gonna make it Jupiter." And you wonder, was Kubrick hiding Saturn too? But yeah, at the end of the movie, you end up trapped in Saturn.
Saturn's going to get you one way or another.
I think he had the book, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Bowie owned that book as well. I remember hearing that.
Interesting.
I'd love to see his full library, see what was in there.
Yeah, you can go online and just type it in, David Bowie's 100 favorite books, and it's vast. He's got a lot, but he was, again, like I said in the last show, Elvis would have a workers coming with 200 books on the occult wherever he traveled. But David Bowie was the same. He had like this traveling library, and like Elvis, doesn't matter if he was drugged up, sober, on vacation, he was always reading. He was just a relentless reader like Elvis.
Did you catch the smiley face symbol on his stuff?
Yeah.
I found that interesting, seeing that in the, well, I call it an eclipse. People call it a black sun or Saturn. But with those two like around the same time, I found that very interesting.
Yeah, that might be a nod to his son. Is actually a Hollywood director. Did what's the name of the movie? Moon and God, what are the two movies? I think God, I forgot the name of the movies. Two very Gnostic movies. You guys, God, I'm drawing a blank here. But he did two very sci-fi movies, and one of them, I think it's called Moon, where there's these symbols on there too.
Oh wow! All right, check that out. Anybody have any questions or anything? Anything that they wanted to add? All right then. I guess we'll wrap it up.
I have some research that I have to do now, but
yeah, you're right. Yo, Miguel, thank you very much. That was really awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome, man.
Yeah, anything that I wanted to add was I got out, and any questions I had was pretty much off already. So thank you.
Yeah, it's just a fraction. I mean, again,
I'm sure.
Bowie, interest in Carl Jung and other figures that, again, were part of it. Some of his supernatural, other mystic events. Some of his psychic abilities. There's just so much more that you'll find, and of course, there's a lot of. That was a hard thing about research because there was also a lot of boring stuff. He does settle down. He does give us Let's Dance, which is hard to his Phil Collins, Stevie Winwood era, which is hard to research, and all that. There's a lot of peaks and valleys.
Yeah. All right. Before we wrap it up, we'll let everybody plug their stuff again real quick. Lisa, the Occult Rejects Mad Scientist, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it tonight. Would you like to say anything?
Thank you for inviting me, Miguel. That was amazing. As usual, I missed your Elvis one, but I caught the replay and it was fantastic. This was just amazing. Thank you so much for this. And thank you, fellow rejects, for the great discussion. And thank you for the invitation.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. And my man, Jules, what is going on, sir?
Again, Nick, thank you for having me. Lisa, Ethan, Tyrone, Tim, it was good seeing you guys. Miguel, it was nice to meet you, brother. It was a great presentation. Would like to join you again on another episode for something. I'm sure I need to catch that Occult Elvis episode. I think I remember when y'all did it. Should have been here for that. But Guys, if you're a member on Patreon, you can catch me. We're going to start up there in about 40 minutes, streaming Twin Peaks. Yeah. And got some shows I'm probably going to be doing tomorrow. I think we have a show tomorrow. The Occult Rejects has a show.
Yes, we do. We got Austin coming on.
Esoteric book review in the morning. I think Nick may be there. I think we're doing the Adepts and the Western Esoteric Tradition again.
Hell yeah.
Super stoked. And then I'm going on with Greyhorn Pagans later on in the day tomorrow. So I'll keep everybody updated. But yeah, y'all follow me on X at greypilledpod, YouTube, Rumble, Apple Podcast, Spotify, all that good stuff.
Awesome.
Thanks again, Nick.
No, of course. Thank you very much. Real quick, I forgot to mention these at the beginning too. I got free stickers if anybody's interested.
And we got shirts.
Oh yeah.
Repping the shirt.
Oh yeah. Thank you very much.
Gotta get some more.
Believe it or not, for people, if they can see that shirt, that is all symbolism for the eyeball on the brain. It's all about the eyeballs in the brain in that image. Nobody would probably even get that at all. So
yeah, I have to explain it to my wife.
Yeah, I'll explain it to you tomorrow on the show if you want or whatever. Ethan, what is going on, sir? Please let everybody know what's up.
Epic to be with you guys as always. Miguel, thanks for all the insights and amazing ideas and yeah, things to research. And thanks for your show and all your books. Both of them are epic. And yeah, I'm easy to find on social media and write not too infrequently anyway. So yeah, peace to everyone.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. And my man Tyrone, what is going on, sir?
It did the same thing to me too. I hit the unmute button and it muted me right back on. No, that was weird. But yeah, I appreciate this conversation, this information and knowledge that you shared with me. It was awesome. I know everybody on the panel enjoyed it. I mean, we couldn't take our eyes off this information. I took a lot of notes, so I really do appreciate that. I had a lot of people who was hitting me up from my side of the channel saying, "Hey, you on there with Miguel Connor?" And they was just loving it. So yeah, you out there. You definitely out there. Everything you can find. Yeah, right. Everything you can find on me is on my website, rebirthoftheword.com. I love history. I love sharing what I've learned. And I wrote a book, Journey Through the Origins of History, that pertains to all that. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. And last but not least, we got Tim Constantine. What is up, sir?
Thank you, Miguel. Great research. Everybody go pick up that book. Thanks to the other rejects. Happy to see all you guys. Thanks, Nick. My show is 6th Sensory Podcast. You can find me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Patreon, and Instagram. And always great to be here. Thanks again.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. And Miguel, please let everybody know what's up. And you already got people asking where can they find your book. So
yeah, well, the usual suspects for the book, including the audiobook, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Inner Traditions. Yeah, the Occult Elvis is out. And again, the David Bowie book we're looking at next year. It's entitled tentatively The Gnostic David Bowie or The Gnostic Life of David Bowie, but we'll see what it ends up being, but look out for it in 2026. Yeah, and I really appreciate you having me. I know it's a slow news cycle, so you're probably like, no big deal having me on, but I just
no, I was like really excited for this. I want to plug real quick Inner Traditions. They do actually, if people are into that type of stuff, like this type of stuff or occult, they do have a lot of, they have a lot of authors on there that I have even had on the show. I can pretty much go on the website, and if there's somebody on there, I can email the lady and they'll try to put me in touch with them. Like, I'm pretty cool with them. So, Miguel is on there, and there is a lot of other authors. Like, if people were to go on that site, they'd be like, God damn, he's serious. A lot of the authors he had is on this website. So go check it out. And his book is on there. So Check it
Yeah,
out.
they
It's
do
good.
a lot of great work. I think somebody created a Gnostic Tarot. I think it's a new feature. My wife, who's been doing tarot readings for decades, personal, now we offer them online, and she uses the Gnostic Tarot, and she gives you a very different journey, very Bowie journey, if anybody's interested. So go to the godabovegod.com for that. But then I have my sort of vanilla website, miguelconnor.com, which has the Elvis stuff and other things. And eventually the David Bowie book will be there.
Hell yeah. Keep an eye out for that David Bowie book. Yeah, thank you everybody who came on the show to join us. I had a really good time. It was an awesome Friday night. It was a great topic. And again, Miguel, that was awesome. And if people haven't heard the Occult Elvis, please go back and check it out. That one was a banger. Thank everybody for in the chat. That's what's up. There was a lot of people there from the beginning to the end. I love it. Until the next one, everybody be well. Later.